Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Val Melvis and today we'll be talking a little bit about how to do research as a writer. And just a little disclaimer, this is not going to be like hardcore research into specific topics sort of thing, more of an overall like why do we do it. So I just wanted to start off by saying, first of all, we need to do research because we want the books we write to be authentic. I think most people can relate having read a book that was written by an author that did not do accurate research into certain customs or cultures or anything, and it just tends to fall flat or even give you a bad image of that culture. And I think as writers, we're all born into different cultures in this world, but a lot of times we use different cultures as inspiration, especially in fictional and fantasy worlds, right? But I think it's really important that we do proper accurate research so we can represent that culture in a good way. And if you have the opportunity to even get it checked by someone from that culture, that would be even better. But yeah, just starting off, if you do use a different culture or customs in your book, make sure that it's going to be an authentic representation of it. Secondly, you really want your novel, whatever it's going to be, no matter the genre, to be relatable for your reader, right? So even in the biggest fantasy hardcore genre, you want there to be a certain amount of realism that resonates with your readers. Because why do we like reading about other characters so much, right? So of course there are epic adventures they go on, or they slay the dragon, or they do all these cool things, but I think it's also a lot of times like the small, more human moments that we relate to as readers. So it's like the sibling bondings, it's the falling in love, it's the enjoying a good home-cooked meal. These sort of things kind of are universal and transcend like fantasy or realism or whatever. But I think it's really important to have that part still in it so your readers can connect to it. And thirdly, it would be having source material you could rely back on or refer back to. So in my case, I'm currently writing an apothecary apprentice character. She knows a lot about herbology and all these different healing herbs and all these like things, right? But I personally don't. But to write her and to make her point of view interesting to the reader and to show that like it's kind of like showing and telling, you know? So you want to know what you're actually writing about. And that's kind of where this also ties in with the relatability of the past point, because having the source material you can refer back to. I mean, of course I could have made up fantasy plants and ascribed different usage to them and all these things, but I wanted to use our real world plants because honestly it's so amazing, guys, what we have like around us. Really, like becoming a writer has really opened my eyes to these things. And I think using those being able to just kind of tap into like, okay, what is what are nettles used for, or what is rosemary used for, like things kind of like that, and I can just get the answer very quickly in case I ever forget it when writing. So, and also these 3 points kind of tied together in presenting an authentic experience to your readers by giving them something they can relate to, and for yourself as the writer having that source material that results into way better writing and the readability overall. So now that we kind of talked a little bit about why we should research, let's get into how we can research. So first of all, of course, I think the easiest way that I tend to start is just Googling it. Like if I have a specific idea in my head I want to do, I'm like, okay, in my project, once again, it's set in Basque, in the Spain area. Basque country is an autonomous community, just don't want to mess that up. And I wanted to know like what were the jobs available there during the 16th century, like what was common, because my story takes place in like a fictional fantasy alternate timeline of that, and I wanted to kind of just Google that. So once I kind of got the list of jobs, I was like, what could I make my main character, like what would she be, you know, doing and things like that. And then it kind of just gave you all these like jobs, of course, like carpenter, smith, maid of all work. I don't know, there's like a whole lot of it. I can't remember like on the top of my head, but then I realized I wanted her to be an apothecary apprentice because she's still pretty young. So you can really just Google anything and then you kind of go on from there. So like you start off with your main Google search, and I think you should just start off with 4 main points you want to hit on: who, when, what, where. So an example, unrelated to what I was just saying, would be Googling what did Armenian maidens, like unmarried women, wear in their hair during the 15th century. So we know the where, Armenia, also who the unmarried women, we know when in the 15th century, and we kind of get the idea like what I'm looking for, like why am I looking for that? That's unrelated, but you kind of know what you're getting into, and then you can go on from there. Hope that makes sense. And then moving on to the second point, this is something I personally really enjoy doing, and that's Pinteresting things. Because Pinterest, I feel, has really gotten so much better in the past couple of years, and you can find a lot of inspirational material on there. I think most people out there have mood boards or Pinterest boards for their characters or stories or whatever. But I think even when you're looking at certain things, like going back to that Armenian example, I was able to type in like Armenian wedding attire, and then I got to see all these amazing wedding dresses, and that just sparks ideas in my head. Like I can see that wedding scene happening, you know, I can see like, oh, that dress looks like really cool, like if she's coming in on a horse, and like, I don't know, it's just a whole lot like tends to spark in my mind like that then. And I think especially adding aesthetic to your research, to your like Pinterest search, helps you kind of get the best or prettiest things of that custom or culture or whatever you're looking for, because I think it just kind of focuses on what's visually aesthetic to the user. And I'm a really visual learner, or easily visually prompted, so this is kind of one of the best ways I would say start researching. Now this is just to get the creativity flowing in the right direction, right? Like this is not for fact checking or historical accuracy or anything. Because moving on to the next point would be the other ways you could research. So the number one tip I would recommend to anyone living in an area that does have public libraries is inquire about books on the topic research that you want to do. So for me, it would have been herbology, healing herbs, all these sort of things. Now, I know that a lot of people do not live in areas that have public libraries like that. And because this is kind of like a free option you can do, so you don't even need to pay money to get the research you're looking for. And it gets you out of the house a little bit, hopefully. You don't go touch grass. But second option would be to actually purchase it, because that's what I had ended up doing. So again, I think this thing made a cameo in another one, but this is once again the German Lexikon der Heilpflanzen und ihre Wirkstoffe. You're learning German here, guys, as well. So essentially it means the lexicon, or the book of healing plants and their like ingredients, what makes them like that. So this was really, really important to me, because I was like, okay, what are the healing plants and then what they do? Because guys, and then I went down a rabbit hole because that got really interesting. But this is essentially something I can once again always refer back to, just kind of make notes like on page blah blah blah. This and this herb are to be found, and these are their uses, and everything. So that would be number two. If you don't have a library, I guess you could end up buying a book. Just try to make, if you can find it secondhand, that's great. You save a lot of money on that. But if not, honestly, guys, once again, Amazon or Google or whatever, you'll find whatever you're looking for, most likely. Third, and that's actually something I really like to do when I want a personal touch to information, is to talk to an expert in that field. Talking to people that devoted their lives to studying specific fields, whether it be archaeology or physics or again herbology, whatever like thing, you can find them online. And a lot of times I found that people are very okay with you emailing them certain questions. Like, don't be weird about it, but like you can be like, hey, I'm writing a book about this and this topic. Oh, well, first of all, introduce yourself, tell them you're writing a book, and be like, hey, I had a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. They can get back to you, they might not, but it's definitely worth a try to, you know, shoot your shot. And lastly, I would say watch YouTube videos or listen to podcasts. Guys, there's so much content out there. There's content I know I'm gonna use that I don't even know of. So I'm sure you can find, YouTube is full of whatever you're looking for, whatever research you're looking for. Like, and once again, this kind of could also be an expert offering you this advice you're looking for free, in a way that you can just, you know, go back and rewatch it if you want to. So yeah, these are just some really great ways you guys can do easy research. Moving on to areas of research. So I was thinking, like, what are the main 8 things I can think of where I feel like if you want to write a good novel, you should know these sort of things, all right? So just starting from the top, no particular order of importance, but it would definitely be customs and cultures. We talked about that. If you want to write about cultures that are not your own, even if it's your own, because I found that a lot of times people in their own culture have a lot of misunderstandings for some reason, do the research properly beforehand. Like, this is going to really help immerse your reader into the world you're writing, into this novel you're writing, and it just gives this touch of realism that we're all looking for, right? So that's super important, and also a respectful thing to do to other cultures. Secondly would be the cuisine. I know this could kind of go into the culture aspect, but I found cuisine like as a kind of separate part, because I love food and I really like writing about food, even fictional foods and things. And I think being able to describe, like, if you have the opportunity to actually taste something authentic from that cuisine, I would definitely recommend it, because it's not just going to be like, of course, online you can see what it looks like, what the ingredients are. Is it sweet, spicy, whatever? You can see those things online. But being able to describe it, how like the warm sauteed potato melted in your mouth, or the texture, or just like the aroma that accompanies it, like it might not smell very good, but it tastes really good. There's just like, once again, this sort of realism that really immerses your readers that I think you guys should research beforehand. Point number 3 would be locations and places. Especially if you're planning to base a location of a real world location, I would say do the research, do all of the research you can imagine. Look into also like how of course the geographical location ties in with the history of this place, because obviously places change over time. But yeah, just kind of look into what are the fauna and flora that can be found there. What are some interesting like points of interest? What do the streets look like there? Are they cobblestone streets, dirt roads? Are they asphalt roads? What does it look like? How do people live? What are houses shaped like? Do they have like roofs like that? I forgot the name. Or do they have flat roofs? There's just so much you can actually look into and once again tie into your story that I would definitely recommend doing that before you start actually drafting your novel. Sorry guys, I don't know, am I sick? I don't know. Fourth would be time periods. Tying back into what I said about geographical area. Of course, if you look at London 21st century or London 18th century, these are two different worlds essentially. Different cultures, different way people act and dress and everything. And looking into these time periods, you can also understand what was normal in that time, what did people have access to, what did they not have access to, and what sort of situations would your characters have faced in everyday life during that time frame. Fifth would be names and titles. So this is more for the fantasy situation, but especially, or regency if you write that sort of thing. It would definitely be getting to know like how do you refer to like the ruler? Okay, is it, I think everyone knows, emperor, king, queen, but these are usually very Western sort of titles, because you have, the rest of the world that uses different titles for these sort of situations. And I think just kind of learning and knowing how to refer to it, like, I don't know, if I'm writing like Japanese inspired novel, they would not call their ruler the king, they would call him the shogun. And I think that's like a very basic detail to get right, but I think getting it wrong would just be a big deal. Does that make sense? So yeah, definitely pay attention to how people refer to each other. Also, like in the Japanese example, a lot of times you refer to people with a suffix, I think it's called in English. So like to young people or young children, you say chan, or to young men, kun, or to someone of authority like san or dono at the end of their name. Like you say their last name and then add that at the end. So these are just important things you need to kind of know when you're going to be writing this culture. 6 would be common mannerisms, also tying back into that. Once again, in Japanese culture, people tend to bow to each other a lot. That is not something you might find in a lot of areas of the world nowadays, but in certain cultures, like, bowing is respectful. Sometimes it can be disrespectful, but just kind of knowing what it's like in those times. Another just fun example that popped to my mind. During Victorian England, if a male friend found one of his female friends just walking in public and he wanted to say hello to her, he was not allowed to stop her. He had to walk with her wherever she was going so she wouldn't be late. Like, you couldn't stop to chat. Like, they would have to continue walking. That was just like something that was the way it was done, I guess. So that's just something, some fun ways you can also add your own touch to the fictional culture that you're writing by adding like these common mannerisms. And 7th would be their wardrobe. So you want to be really accurate. Like, the wardrobe of your character should, of course, depend on a couple of things. And one thing is aesthetics, I'm not gonna lie. But also very realistically, it would be what climate do they live in? What is their social class? What fabrics do they have access to? And what is their profession? Like, I feel like these are the important things to note when thinking about research. Because, you know, what is their profession? If they're a blacksmith, they should probably have very simple clothing, but a very durable leather apron they can work with. Big chunky boots, you know, to walk around in the forge and things like that. In terms of fabrics, depends also on the time frame and the location. I mean, ancient China, ancient Japan, and those places had access to silk, but the West didn't. Like, you'd have a lot more wool over there. So maybe you come up with a completely different fabric. I don't know, but it's just interesting, like, to do those sort of researches, and also this kind of all adds up to your world building at the end of the day. And making your story be really realistic. I find that drawing inspiration from the real world is the best way to write your story, no matter what. And lastly, it would be the language and slang. So what were common, you know how nowadays we have meme culture, but that is not necessarily something new. People have had memes for thousands of years. So what are some common slang that people would use? You know, what are memes that people would find funny, or catchphrases or idioms, or anything, these sort of things that is just like, it's raining cats and dogs, and you're like, as a non-native, you know, UK person, you're like, what does that even, why would it rain my pets? Like, could you stop? So you just kind of can make up a lot of things, and I feel like it's a really, really fun exercise to do. And just getting like these 8 points down before you get into drafting can really help you in the long run when you go through like the second or third draft or revision, in my opinion. So yeah, last reminder, document your research. Whatever you do, make a folder and just call it research. And in the folder, personally, I'd recommend having, you know, research in terms of like, what do we just discussed, these 8 points of interest, and then separate research for specific points you want to focus on in your story. But it's really, really important that you have it organized and easily accessible, that whenever you're revising, you can just draw it out and be like, oh yeah, because having inconsistencies in your own story tends to really suck, and readers really tend to notice those quickly. So I would definitely recommend doing it. So yeah, these were just my couple of advices, if that's a thing to say, of how to do research for your novel. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thank you guys. Bye!